Hey Sue, it's really fun to see you on your new guy, Bon Ami. What a wonderful name. I know you're getting ready for a horse show in a week, so I want to give you some quick tips to really increase your scores. So the first thing that jumps out at me, and this is going to change the whole look of the entire picture, is that your reins are too long and your hands are too close to the saddle. I want you to shorten those reins 3 or 4 inches, but I don't want you to shorten his neck as a result of shortening the reins 3 or 4 inches. Instead, open your elbows a little bit more and carry your hands over the withers. Your hands are too far back, and sometimes when I see you from behind, your elbows are actually behind your body. So shorter reins, hands more forward. If you think of your elbows being exactly at your waist, when your hands are over the withers in the work area, your elbows should be maybe 1 inch forward from the place that they would be if they were exactly at your waist. That's going to change the entire picture. As far as Bon Ami is concerned, two things jump out at me. These are the two things I want you to focus on. It's going to raise your score significantly. First and foremost, his neck is too high. It's above the powertrain of the hindquarters. And I picked a point, I froze it on a spot where his neck is in the right spot. That's at 4 minutes and 31 seconds. I want you to look at 4 minutes and 31 seconds, memorize where his neck is. At the beginning of that split second, the nose is a little bit too far in, but then toward the end of the 4 minutes and 31 seconds, his nose comes a little more forward. We want his nose about 5 degrees in front of the vertical. But as you do your own personal checks on his frame, when you do your own videos or photographs or whatever, take a screenshot at 4 minutes and 31 seconds. I do not want to see his neck any higher than that. So that means in your schooling, you'll use +7 +1 suppling in the beginning, and then later on, connecting aids. I'm not seeing connecting aids, number one, to put his neck down, and number two, through some very critical spots, which we'll talk about as I go through parts of the test. But remember those connecting aids, driving aids, through your closed outside hand while keeping him flexed at the pole to the inside. Now, I know that you've had some issues with him thinking forward, going forward, and it looks like you're really making some progress there. So it would be important for you as you teach him connecting aids to do it in stages. Go on a circle where you already have some bend, and that's one thing I do want to talk about. We need more bend, especially to the right. But staying on the bend on the circle, close both legs, ask for a lengthening and posting trot. Bring him back, close both legs, ask for a lengthening and posting trot. Till it's a knee-jerk reaction from him that when you close your two legs, he powers into a lengthening. Then the next stage is to add your hand, because I have a feeling if we use your hand without doing this first stage, he's going to think, oh, you've closed that outside hand in a fist, that's my cue to slow down or stop. So the second stage to teaching him the connecting aids is to close both legs, accelerate into your lengthening, and while you're lengthening, close your outer hand in a fist. And if he starts to slow down, give him some taps with the stick. He's to stay in a lengthening through that closed outside fist until you see his neck get even an inch longer or an inch lower. As soon as you see that happening, then you can come back to working trot and praise him. He needs to step through that closed outside hand in order to come correctly on the bit. Now, if you're going to be keeping your driving aids and your outside hand closed for that long as you accelerate into a lengthening through that closed outside fist, you're going to have to keep squeezing and releasing on the inside rein so that he doesn't counterbend his neck. And when you're tracking to the left, I think you can just squeeze and release on the inner rein. When you're tracking to the right where he doesn't bend as much, turn the right wrist, turn the right wrist, turn the right wrist as if you're unlocking a door. So accelerate through a closed outside hand, keeping the flexion to the inside. That's your second stage of teaching him the connecting aids. And then the third stage is to just do connecting aids in your working walk, trot, or canter. If they're not going through, go back to stage 2, where you accelerate through the closed outside hand. If that's not working, go back to stage 1 and know that when you press with both calves, he surges forward into a lengthening. So I already mentioned that the main thing is we need to get that neck lower like it was at 4 minutes and 31 seconds. But we also want to see more bend and flexion to the inside. So I've picked out some spots where you can see what I'm talking to. Mostly it's to the right. Occasionally we see it to the left, but mostly to the right where he's counterflexed as he's going through a corner or a curve, or just finishing a corner or a curve and falling on the inside shoulder. So look at 2 minutes and 46 seconds, 4 minutes and 36 seconds, 6 minutes and 11 seconds. He needs to be more flexed and bent to the inside, and those are good examples of what you don't want. And I believe all of those are on the right rein, but there is an example of it happening on the left rein, which doesn't happen as often. He bends a little bit better to the left. But if you look at 7 minutes and 44 seconds, you're coming through a corner to the left. He is not bent. His haunches go out, and therefore he falls on the inside shoulder, and he's counterflexed to the right. He needs to bend better from nose to tail through all of these corners, and also, of course, through your circles and your serpentines. But I wanted you to have good visual reference points so you see what I'm talking about when I say he's not bending or flexing well enough to the inside. Now you can help him, especially with this right bend, with your position. I want you to look at 3 minutes and 16 seconds. You're leaning to the inside. Your right shoulder is forward, and he's counterflexed. So the position of your body with your right shoulder forward and leaning to the inside encourages him to be stiff to the right and hollow to the left. So you want to be centered over his body. If you're going through a corner or curve, bring your right shoulder back. And if we were to drop a tube over your upper body, no part of your body would touch the tube. In this case, your right shoulder would be touching the tube and probably your left hip. We want equidistant of your entire torso from this imaginary tube that we've dropped over your upper body. So you need to stay more upright in a vertical plane. Now, as I look through the tests, the first thing I want to talk about is the shallow loop. I really can't tell because of the camera angle. And I see that you do have letters there, but it looks like the loop isn't accurate. I can't swear to this, but it looks like the first part of the loop is really large, and then the second part of the loop going back to the track is too sharp. Make sure as you're doing your shallow loop that the top of your shallow loop is across from B or E, so that the amount of steps that you take out toward X and the amount of steps you take back are the same. Like I said, I can't tell that for sure from the camera angle, but that's what it appears to be. So just check that. You don't want to lose points for accuracy. Now, your free walk on a long rein, or your medium walk on a long rein, two things. It's long rein, not loose rein. You need to have a straight line contact. And he needs to march. I know you know that, but he needs to be more energetic. Think about breathing your legs, taking them off, and then placing both of them on a little bit further back so they're near his engine if you feel like he's going to be lazy or dull as you do your free walk, or your, medium walk on a long rein in your test. And you want to preface that in the same way you want to preface the stretchy circle with connecting aids. I'm not seeing connecting aids. I'm just seeing you open your fingers and allowing him to do whatever he wants with his head and his neck. And remember, if he's on the bit, if he's longitudinally bent, opening your fingers just allows him to chew the reins out of your hand in that round frame, to seek the contact forward and down. So before you open your fingers and allow the rein to get longer, give a 3-second set of connecting aids. Press with both legs through that closed outside hand. Squeeze and release inner hand if you're on the left rein. Turn the right wrist, turn the right wrist, turn the right wrist if you're tracking to the right. Same thing when you're shortening the reins. Again, at the end of the medium walk on a long rein, do it through connecting aids so he stays on the bit. As you're getting ready to shorten the reins, close both legs, push toward a lengthening, close your outer hand in a fist, keep him flexed to the inside with your inner hand. So if you are giving your connecting aids, I think one of the reasons that they're not going through is that he's not bent enough to the inside. He's not bent or flexed enough to the inside. Because remember, your connecting aids are made up of driving aids plus bending aids plus a rein of opposition. If he's not bent and flexed to the inside, you're missing one of the 3 sets of aids that connects the horse, that puts the horse on the bit. So just working on your bend to the left and mostly to the right is going to help your connecting aids go through. I do want to mention here, I got a little bit off topic. I was talking about your contact, and I want you to shorten the reins and have your hands more forward. But you have wonderful elastic elbows in the canter. You've really taken that whole idea home. Your elbows go open and close, open and close. You have nice jockey arms. Just make sure sometimes that your hands don't come up too high. Now, getting back to bending, I'm looking at the second test with the serpentines. I want you to think in the change of bend so that you really confirm his desire to be on the bit. That as you're going to change bend, you press with both calves as if you're going to accelerate into the lengthening, and then you close your new outside hand in a fist and keep them flexed with the new inside hand. So, in other words, as you go to do that change of bend, do it through connecting aids. One minor point here, you do not need to switch your whip in your tests unless you particularly feel that you need it for him. But the time that you switched your whip, it disturbed his rhythm. And just remember the training scale. Rhythm is the first ingredient in the training scale, and that's the first thing that the judge is looking at when the judge is judging you is the rhythm regular? Is the tempo a good speed for the horse to be in good balance? So you don't want to do anything that's going to jeopardize change of rhythm. So if you don't need to change your whip, don't change your whip. If you do need to change your whip, rather than pulling it through like you did, which is going to cause a change in the feeling of the bit in his mouth, change it by turning the whip hand upside down so the whip is straight in front of your face and your baby fingers on top, and then put the thumb of the opposite hand on top of that baby finger and pull the whip straight up. So that way your contact stays exactly the same over the withers. You don't widen and separate and raise one hand by pulling the long whip through. But you can go through this test without changing your whip. I wouldn't worry about that, but as a homework assignment, practice switching your whip correctly. Okay, as far as your counter, the beginning of your counter canter, you were doing walk to counter canter. Close your outside hand on the walk to canter transition. The first one he did a couple of steps of trot. The second one I think he did 1 step of trot. But if you're doing walk to canter, he can't have any dribbly trot steps. And what ensures that you stick the outside hind and he strikes off cleanly from walk to canter is closing that outside hand in a fist through the canter depart. Basically, if you give your connecting aids through your canter depart, that will be enough to stick that outside hind leg on the ground. So he does a clean transition. Then as far as your counter canter, it's a little bit too fast. We want it a little bit slower. But the main thing is what I said at the very beginning, is neck needs to be lower. So I would do the following exercise to improve your counter canters. First, go in true canter on a circle and do some counter suppling. You don't have to go to a full -7. You could go to -3 and then back to +1, and -3 and back to +1. So his neck goes 3 inches to the outside and then goes back to inside flexion. That's the +1. So that he gets used to you suppling him away from the lead that he's on. Then you can start to incorporate your counter canter loop. And while you're doing your counter canter loop, keep your seat bone, inside seat bone weighted, inner leg on the girth, outer leg behind the girth for the canter lead that you want. But start to do these small counter supples, -3 or even -4, away from the counter canter lead. That's going to accomplish 2 things. It's going to get him in better balance so he doesn't lean on his outside shoulder, and it's going to remind him to keep his neck a little bit lower. And as his neck is lower, it's going to be easier for the hind legs to come through. Right now, with his neck up and his back down, his hind legs have no option but to push out the back door, and that's why it feels a little bit fast and chaotic. As his neck is down, you have a clear pathway. Hind legs can come under, his back can come up, his neck comes down, and there's a circle of energy that is self-perpetuating. So use the counter suppling to help you with your balance and your frame in your counter canter. Now, as far as your leg yields, you said where they are at this point, which I thought was quite funny. They're not bad. They're really not bad at all. I want his neck lower. That's the theme again. They will be better as his neck is lower. But I want you to think about two things as far as you're concerned. If you're going to leg yield away from the track, which you did, you need to change your posting diagonal first. So you can come through the corner on the correct posting diagonal, change onto what's called the wrong posting diagonal, and leg yield in away from the track. Because if you're doing it on in posting trot, you want to be sitting when the hind leg you want to affect is on the ground, so that you can encourage it to go more forward sideways in the leg yield. So let's say you're tracking to the right, you're posting when the left front leg is coming forward, then you change your posting diagonal, so you're in the air when left hind right front is in the air, which means you're sitting in the saddle when that left hind is on the ground and the left fore is also on the ground. That way, as you use your leg, because it's always easier to use your leg when you're sitting as opposed to when you're posting, you're going to be using your leg when the left hind leg is on the ground, and you can encourage him to go more sideways. So, and that's the reason we do have posting diagonals. So you're sitting when the inside hind leg is on the ground when you're going, like normally around the ring or normally on a circle. So if you're leg yielding away from the rail, you want to be sitting when the leg that's closest to the track is on the ground. And then one last thing is, you see that leg yield where you're going over to the right? Think about stepping down into the right iron as if you're going to dismount off the right side of the horse. If you freeze the video, you can see that you're leaning and falling a little bit to the left as he goes right, which gives him conflicting age. Your leg is saying go to the right. Your body weight is saying I want you to stay over to the left. So I know that sounds like a lot of stuff, but since your show is coming right up, if you just focus on three things: shorten the reins with your hands more forward over the withers. That's for you. For him, he needs to bend better, bend and flex at the pole better in both directions, but particularly when you track to the right. And you need to get that neck lower. It's too high to have him properly connected properly on the bit. So just those three things, focus on those three things, and I think you'll have an awesome show. So if you